to briefly introduce myself. I've been in the IT industry for 19 years, almost 20. Got management experience in various sectors and domains, including software development, IT services and operations, and of course, cybersecurity. Currently, I'm working at CyberArk as a DevOps evangelist based in Hong Kong, covering Asia Pacific and Japan region. Love this job as it ties up all my experience and knowledge. Now, let's get started by talking about the trends. 2020 has seen a massive acceleration in adoption of cloud computing across the globe. While many companies were already in the process of enabling a remote workforce or digitalizing their business, the global lockdown put these programs into overdrive. We're seeing years of digital transformation take place in just months. Over 90% of companies are now in the cloud, which is massive. Sensitive systems and access are rapidly moving to the cloud as well, where that means leaving and shifting on-premises workload by adopting cloud, SaaS, or developing new cloud-native applications. From what has been shared by our customers, as well as market researchers, we expect the cloud adoption will continue to be accelerating next year. Gartner published the top strategic technology trends for 2021 last month. One of the themes is about location independence. In the new norm shift by COVID-19, almost everyone, including customers, employees, partners, operate in physically remote locations, meaning that on top of hybrid cloud or multi-cloud strategies, the cloud services will be distributed to different locations that are physically closer to the users. That helps with low latency scenarios, reduce data costs, and help accommodate laws that dictate the data must remain in a specific geographic location. Anywhere operation will be viable as well. This allows business to be accessed, delivered, and enabled anywhere. Many access now exist outside of traditional security perimeter. Approaches like cyber security measures essentially allows the security perimeter to be defined about the identity of a person or thing, like services or applications. Now, the cloud brings with it a lot of benefits, but also many changes. The first change is a lift or shift in perimeter from network to identity. As our enterprise network is now distributed between on-premises, managed data center, and multiple public cloud networks, we can no longer manage perimeter by network segments. Identity remains a constant to drive business permission. The physical network has been dissolved and made way for a second major change. The change of identities, cloud identities must be secured. Additionally, the cloud edges in multiple cloud and hybrid cloud environment, each with their own security concern and tooling, creating a fragmented security architecture. Further, with all these changes, there's a lack of cloud security professionals and expertise. All these things combined are making it challenging to tackle cloud securities. The cloud has also become a major target of cyber attacks as well. Threats in the cloud are both new and familiar. The most common threat, specific to the cloud, involve misconfigured access and over-permission identities that cyber attacker can leverage to access the entire cloud environment. The complexity of cloud permissions and IAM models, coupled with the dynamic nature of cloud operations and independence of DevOps teams, means that excessive permissions are a very common phenomenon. Other common cloud attacks paths include credentials that are embedded in code or CLI tools. So here come some figures backing up why it's so mission critical to tackle excessive cloud permission. First, 90% of malicious data breaches in IBM Cause of Data Breach report involve misconfigured cloud servers that ties with the stolen credential for the #1 threat vectors. Attacker knows excessive permissions of a vulnerability are zeroing in. Any IAM permission represents a potential pathway for attackers. In essential, all permissions are switches that can be flipped for identity to access resources. There are over 15,000 permissions across AWS, Azure, and GCP, meaning that there are 15,000 of switches to properly configure it. Meanwhile, data breaches from the cloud misconfiguration cost 4.4 million on average. That's over 500,000 more expensive than on average breach. And the cloud security team identified this as the top challenge. ESG Research surveyed over 375 cloud security experts, and they found they rank over-permissioned identities as the most common cloud platforms misconfiguration. What does it take to secure identity in the cloud? First, we need visibility into all cloud identity and the permissions to ensure no identities are over-permissioned. Next, we need to enable to secure the identities with tools and approach designed for the cloud IAM, such as federation between cloud providers and IAM and identity directory, just-in-time access, and least privilege approach. Last but not least, privilege access must be effectively and efficiently managed. The first step is always difficult. Let's review a new attack pathway using a real-world example from a recent breach of a leading US financial institute. So first, the attacker exploited a vulnerability and entered the financial institution's AWS environment and connect to a VM instance. In this case, it was a misconfigured firewall, but it could very well be compromising a legitimate user credentials with phishing attacks, or in case of insider threats, they are already in. Next, the attacker assumed the roles of firewalls that has been reconfigured with excessive permissions. They can now then execute commands they are not supposed to have permission to run. In this particular case, list privilege list bucket command that are not necessary, and sync bucket command which violates list permissions, as it hasn't been executed for months. Essentially, the attacker used this role to access data stores and store identity information on over 100 customers, and post them publicly on GitHub. In other cases, attacker could exploit excessive permissions to shut down critical infrastructure or serverless functions, disturb cloud-based applications, or exploit compute resources to launch crypto mining. The critical step here is the excessive permissions that allow unnecessary privilege accessing the compromised identity. And that's why CyberArk comes into play. For those who you are not familiar with CyberArk, CyberArk is the only security company laser focused on striking down target cyber threats, those that make their ways inside to attack the heart of the enterprise. We pride ourselves at CyberArk on staying close with our customers and their evolving needs. One thing we like to say is DNA, innovation is in our DNA. I'm thrilled to share with you that we have just launched our latest innovation earlier this month, Cloud Entitlements Manager. Cloud Entitlements Manager is the industrial-first AI-powered cloud security solution with a privilege-first approach to improve security and expand visibility of cloud infrastructure platforms. Like the rest of CyberArk Identity Security portfolio, Cloud Entitlements Manager is anchored in privilege and offers customers an approach that reduces risk, simplifies operations, and improves business agility. The solution identifies unused privilege and risky permission for cloud entities that could be exploited by attackers, and also we eliminate them with AI-generated policy corrections. This privilege is the heart of the solutions. Cloud Entitlements Manager uses AI to generate granular IAM policy that remove only excessive permission, so that all necessary and valid access are preserved. So if we go back to the same attack chain, let's take a look at how Cloud Entitlements Manager could defend against the internal and external threat vectors of excessive permissions. First, the solution can detect and identify the excessive permission. That's number one. Secondly, the solution can generate code for a new, safer IAM policy based on this privilege that remove excessive permissions. Third, we can apply that new policy to implement this privilege and proactively defense. Fourth, we can block the additional attacks by removing the additional IAM policy in place that give excessive access to the same resources or to other resources for the same identity. Here's a quick breakdown of the benefits of Cloud Entitlements Manager that brings aside from disturbing that attack chain. Ease of use is one of the key features and beauty of the solution. We understand that everything in the cloud is still new and that necessary skills change very quickly. So we've designed the solutions to put consumer-grade user experience in mind. From a very powerful interactive dashboard, you can have insight into the platform, which detects all permissions across the major platforms and identities that pose risk. Another feature you are quite proud of is the access map that allows you to visualize relationship between identities, permissions, and resources in interactive factions, so that you can understand the pathway to your critical resources. Now let's take a look at the solutions, right? So let's use AWS example. For administrators who access AWS, there are many ways to do it. So what I'm going to show now is using single sign-on solution. So CyberArk have a single sign-on solution called Adaptive. It also can provide MFA as well. So as you can see on the screen, I'm logging into the AWS environment, and I'm receiving a message for me to approve the sign-in right now. So let me click on the task message to approve the logon. Okay, I've logged on to CyberArk Adaptive, our single sign-on solutions. So I want to access AWS, so I click on the icon, and AWS asks me which roles should I use. Like many of users in your company, I have multiple duties, and I was assigned to multiple roles on AWS, including administrator, access to different kinds of AWS resources, and different kinds of roles. So the big question is, which role should I use? Many users will simply pick the most powerful one because it's relatively convenient as well as productive. However, do they need all those permissions? The answer is probably not. So how can we limit the permissions that being granted? So now you can see I've already logged on to the AWS as a federated logon. So let's log on to Cloud Entitlements Manager as well. So this is the logon screen of the Cloud Entitlements Manager. After you register, you can log on to your organizations, and we can select the authentication method here. So I've configured a single sign-on, but let's log on to a local account, which is the default one once you register these services. So let me type in my username and password and click sign in. CyberArk is a security company, so it will also prompt me to log on using multi-factor authentication as well. So in a moment, I just received my authentication code. So let me type it in like so and click sign in. So as you can see here on the screen, in a moment, we have a very lovely interactive dashboard. So on the right of the dashboard, you can see many circles here, which represent a different cloud workspace. So we have a few accounts on board on AWS, a few projects on board on GCP, and also 2 directories on Azure. So we can take a closer look at them. Let me click on AWS. Let me select my account. You can see here, there's exposure level, which basically demonstrating how our privilege permissions or recommendation stack being generated by CEM are shown here, and also some recommendation as well. So let's pick an account and take a closer look at it. So on the screen, we can see here there's a list of cloud entities, including some user roles, groups, as well as roles. So let's take Robert, I'll use it as an example. So once you click on it, on the right, we have a lovely access map. So if you zoom in a little bit, you can see Robert here, and he can access a lot of AWS resources and surface. And those green bubbles outside here are the resources that he is entitled to. If you click on Robert, it will generate some interactive informations like Robert assigned with a lot of permissions. He has used 7 of those, but more than 700 permissions he's never used. So probably we can remove those. And also we can drag different kind of systems and services, like we click on developers. Probably because Robert is in developers group, he is granted to certain kind of permissions, including the secret S3 bucket for storage. And we can very easily see if you click on S3, he is accessing to everything on S3. So this is something Robert doesn't use, and this is something we can remove. So this is very interactive. And we on the left, we can show the exposure of this account as well. With permission type, meaning that if he can create or write things, this is a very powerful exposure. And the target resources, the number of resources that he can access to, and other factors as well. Lower on the screen, you can see a trend, exposure over time. You can see how this user or these resources or entities have the level exposure over time. You can see here very clearly. Now let's move back to our slides, and let me show you the second benefits. So once again, list privilege is the key. Cloud Entitlements Manager provides the actual code and script and IAM policy that compatible to each provider. The remediation are highly granular and detailed in nature. They remove the individual permissions that pose risk, preserving all necessary access for the identity to continue performing the intended functions. Removing risky permissions allow proactive defense against external attackers for that compromise identities, and also we can stop the inside of attackers who cannot access the resources outside of the allowed access. So let me quickly show you a demonstration on how we can do that. So if you go back to our Cloud Entitlements Manager page, and let's look at another identities. So let's pick this one. This is very interesting. So the other day, I'm working with one of my clients, and they got a group which have administrator in that name in it, and he got a similar access map on the right. A lot of circles, a lot of resources, a lot of services that's allowed. So it's administrator group, right? It makes sense. It's so powerful. It has so much privilege. It makes total sense. That's very interestingly, it turns out it's not the case. So if we look at the solution and the recommendations here, we get one recommendations. That is remove the permissions that are not used in over 90 days. So let's take a look at the CM details. You will, it will provide, CM will provide a long list of the permissions grouped by the services. You know, it's very granular. On AWS, we are talking about more than 7,000 of permissions. So if we want to, do it manually, it's kind of impossible. So how can we fix it? There's, it's very simple. Just click on the Create Fix button, and we need to do two things, right? As instructed on the screen. The first is create a new inline policy that, with the attached JSON. So let's copy the policy and try to attach it into this inline policy. So we click on this link, and Cloud Entitlement Manager will bring us directly to the page to configure that inline policy, right? And here you can see inline policy. We don't have any right now, so let's create one by clicking this link. So typically, administrator or cloud operators will use the policy generator to select the privilege. You can select the AWS services here, very long list, and in each services we can pick the actions. Again, very long list, for many services. So it's kind of difficult and impossible to make a granular policy, based on this approach. So let's go back to the screen. Instead of clicking and selecting those permissions manually, we can create custom policy, simply paste the generated policy, which generated by the CEM, Cloud Entitlements Manager. We can give it a name, like so, and we can attach the policy. Okay, that's complete the first step. So let's go back to CEM and do the second recommendation, which is remove the policy from the group. Okay, we are talking about administrator access policy. We go back to AWS, and you see the policy is right here. So we can simply click Detach Policy button. Detach it, and now it's done. So this is how we can quick fix a policy, the permission over permission scenario for this particular group. So let's mark it as fixed. So Cloud Entitlement Manager will regularly scan and analyze the cloud platform. So that's, but for demonstration purpose, let me manually trigger it. So under platform management, I can select my account and start a scan. We'll come back in a moment and review this group and see what changes Cloud Entitlement Manager made. So let's continue to our slides. So the first benefit is, of course, enabling this privilege. This privilege allows organizations to move forward in their digital transformation and confidently adopt advanced services from various providers. As you can see in the demonstration, AI-powered recommendations ensure all permissions are reviewed, while taking the guesswork out of the crafting of new policy that support this privilege. And as UI come into place, organizations can easily and continuously monitor the risk at the platform, environment, or identity level to verify this privilege. Well, there are operation benefits to by the solutions as well. First, the exposure level analysis provide details insight on the target platform, permission type, and additional risk vector in all the individual permissions. That helps organizations to see where the greatest source of risk are, and on the top recommendations to make the list the fastest path to risk reduction. Exposure level scores also provide codified historical analysis of risk over time for each environment and platform, providing clarity when it comes to ROI and reporting. Finally, the list privilege is the key elements to many regulations and industrial framework. Cloud Entitlement Manager is the latest step in our identity security portfolio, anchored in privilege. We focus on securing all identities, including human, machine, and remote vector. And all privilege pathways to sensitive workloads. Cloud Entitlements Managers strengthen our PM solutions through extending latest privilege across cloud environments with simple, consistent, controlled. And in the cloud, we also offer capability for securing access to cloud management console, securing cloud infrastructure, and securing cloud-native applications and DevOps pipelines as well. Now, here's some good news to everyone here who joined this section. Cloud Entitlement Manager is now available as a simple and easy-to-use free trial. You can sign up and connect to your cloud accounts in under 5 minutes. And within an hour, utilize the AI-powered recommendations specifically to your unique environments. The solution requires no existing CyberArk license, no professional service or expertise to set it up. You can register for the free trial using the link or scanning the QR code on the screen. We'll share them during Q&A sections again. So let's quickly go back to our environment and see what happens to our, the group. So if we go back to the dashboard, like so, let me pick my account. Sorry about it. Let's do it again. View all. And if we search for admins, you can see here the exposure level dropped from over 90% to 0 right now. So we click on it. You can see the exposure over time drop significantly. Access map is way simpler, and the exposure level is very low. If we go back to our recommendation again, you can see here it's secured. We don't have additional recommendation for you, and our job here is done. So let's close with the last word on why we can be your trusted partner and take care of this challenge. This issue of excessive permission is fundamentally an issue of least privileged access. It's a problem best resolved at identity level. And for that, you can trust CyberArk above anyone else. Cloud Entitlement Managers provides a rapid, simple, and consistent solution for all cloud identities. It's an easy-to-use, powerful solution that provides time to value and doesn't require any footprint in your cloud estate. From the expert of over 6,000 customer trusts to implement this privilege across their endpoints, servers, cloud workloads, and applications in complicated environments. That's pretty much it. I believe now is the time for question and answer. Is there any questions?
Hi, Quincy.
Hi.
So thank you so much for that very interesting and insightful presentation. I see that we have received a few questions for you.
Yep.
The first one is how CEM is licensed.
Oh, so CM is licensed based on the workspace, meaning that, on AWS, it will be AWS account, the number of GCP projects, or for Azure, it will be the directory that we connect and scan to. So it's based on the number of workspaces.
Okay. The second question is there any limitations in the 30 days trial?
Oh, during the 30-day trials, that's unlimited, meaning that you can connect to, any number of cloud workspace. If you want, you can connect to any, EKS cluster or AWS or GCP or Azure as much as you want.
Okay. I'm just going to take one more question. We have a lot of questions, but I think we can take one more. That
So,
is, what will happen to the trial tenant if we'd like to process to get some licenses, but our procurement process takes longer than remaining days?
okay. So I'm glad, some of you are interested in the product. So, if your procurement process takes longer, by default, all the data in the cloud entitlements manager will be retained on the cloud, but you no longer can scan it. But I strongly recommend, those who face these situations to reach out to our CyberArk representative, and we can see what we can do.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Quincy. That was a very insightful presentation, and we thank CyberArk for being the diamond sponsor for CyFence 2020 Live ASEAN. Thank you so much.